Silas Easton didn't expect to see his past when he stepped out of the black Rolls-Royce and onto the perfectly manicured lawn of Westbridge University, but there it was, walking straight toward him in a worn denim jacket and a smile that hadn't changed in 15 years. "Silas?" the woman asked, her voice uncertain but familiar. He froze. "Aurora," he said, blinking twice, as if the memory of her might disappear if he looked too hard. "Aurora Reyes." The girl who sat behind him in economics, who once spilled coffee on his research paper and apologized with a homemade cupcake. The girl he hadn't thought of in over a decade until now, when she was standing in front of him looking like something out of a movie. Her hair, longer now, curled slightly at the ends and framed her face. Her eyes were still that same stormy gray, and she wore no makeup, just like she did back then. He hadn't planned to come to the reunion. In fact, he'd almost skipped it entirely until his assistant slipped the invitation into his briefcase and said, "You should go. People need to see the man behind the billion." Now, standing here in a tailored navy suit that cost more than she probably made in a month, he suddenly felt overdressed and completely unprepared. "You look different," she said, laughing awkwardly. "Not in a bad way, just, grown up." "I guess a few boardrooms and private flights will do that," Silas replied, trying to keep his tone light. "You look exactly the same," she raised a brow. "I haven't heard that one in years." "No, I mean it," he said. "Still you." They stood in silence for a moment as the reunion crowd buzzed around them, laughter, music, clinking wine glasses, but it all faded into the background. "So what do you do now?" he asked, even though he couldn't believe he didn't already know. "I teach art at a public school in Brooklyn," she said with a shrug. "Pays terrible, but the kids are great. What about you? You still into finance?" He hesitated. "I run Easton Holdings." Her eyebrows lifted. "Wait. Easton Holdings, you're that Easton?" He nodded slowly. She let out a surprised laugh. "You're the guy who bought out that entire tech startup last year." "Among a few other things," he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. She looked at him for a beat, then grinned. "You always did love your spreadsheets," and just like that, the ice was broken. They ended up walking together toward the open-air cocktail area, where string lights hung between trees and someone played a soft jazz tune on a piano. He didn't know why he kept glancing her way, or why his chest felt tighter every time she laughed. But something about Aurora grounded him in a way no one else had in years. "So," she said, sipping her wine, "do you actually remember anything from college, like real memories, not just the GPA and thesis?" He chuckled. "I remember you dropping your sketchbook in the fountain." "You cried for 10 minutes, she groaned. "That was humiliating." "It was kind of beautiful, actually." She gave him a look. "The sketchbook was ruined." "No, I meant you crying over your art. Most people wouldn't care that much." Her cheeks flushed. She looked away, but he saw the smile tugging at her lips. The night wore on, and somewhere between dessert and the campus tour, he found himself walking beside her under the same oak trees they passed as students. The air was warm. The cicadas buzzed faintly and their steps fell into rhythm. "You ever think about what your life would have been like if you stayed here?" she asked. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I don't think I would have ended up where I am without leaving." She nodded. "I get that." He stopped walking. "Do you regret it, staying?" Aurora paused. "Not really. I like my life. It's not glamorous, but it's real." He looked at her then, really looked at her. "You ever wish you had more?" She turned to him, eyes catching the moonlight. "I used to, but lately, I just want something that feels like home." Home, that word hit him harder than he expected. Before he could answer, a voice called her name. A woman from their class waved her over, and Aurora gave him a soft smile before jogging off. Silas stood there, watching her go. He didn't come to Westbridge to reconnect. He came because he thought it'd be a quick in and out. Shake a few hands. Smile for a photo. Leave. Instead, he'd found Aurora Reyes, and for the first time in years, the idea of more didn't look like another acquisition or another zero at the end of his net worth. It looked like her. The next morning, Silas was supposed to fly back to Manhattan. That was the plan. He had board meetings stacked like dominoes, an investor conference in Milan, and a dinner scheduled with the CEO of a rival firm who was finally ready to sell. But instead of stepping into his waiting car, he stood in front of the old alumni center, coffee in hand, scanning the courtyard like a man who'd misplaced something he wasn't ready to lose. "She's usually here around this time," said a voice behind him. He turned to see a woman with tight curls and a clipboard, name tag swinging from her lanyard. "Aurora's friend," she said. "Gina," Silas nodded. "I'm just passing through." Gina raised an eyebrow. With a driver waiting by a black Rolls, he didn't answer, and she smiled knowingly. "She's leading a mural workshop in the old art building today. You should go say hi. She hasn't stopped talking about that weirdly intense conversation you two had under the trees." Silas didn't ask how she knew. Instead, he found himself walking across campus, past buildings that felt both familiar and foreign. The art building had once been a crumbling relic. Now it was painted in vibrant hues, the exterior covered in student-designed panels. As he stepped inside, the scent of linseed oil and acrylics hit him like a memory. He heard her before he saw her. "No, Andre, the brush doesn't need to be perfect. Just move with the shape. Let the wall guide you." Her voice was calmer now, firmer. She stood on a ladder, jeans speckled with paint, a swath of cerulean streaked across her forearm. She was helping a boy maybe 10 or 11 angle his brush along a swirling ocean wave. Her hand steadied his wrist, and the way he looked at her like she was magic hit Silas in a place he didn't know he had. When she finally looked down, her eyes widened. "You came back." "I did," he said. "Your friend said you were here." "She would," Aurora muttered, climbing down the ladder. "Ignore the mess. We're halfway through this piece and the school board is already complaining about the budget." "I'm not here to critique," he said. "I was curious." "Curious?" she asked, wiping her hands on a rag. "About you," Silas said, watching her face carefully. She blinked once, then motioned him toward a quieter hallway. They walked past scattered canvases and low hums of chatter until they reached a small gallery space filled with student work. He noticed a painting tucked in the far corner. It was abstract, but the energy in it was unmistakable furious red and aching indigo clashing in violent harmony. "You did that one," he said quietly. She didn't deny it. "I painted it after my mother passed. I couldn't speak for weeks." "That canvas got everything I didn't know how to say." Silas studied it. "It's beautiful. It's grief," she said flatly. He looked at her then, really looked. "You've lived more than I thought." "So have you," she said. "You just hide it better." He didn't argue. "You left right after graduation," she said. "No goodbye, no forwarding address." "I had reasons." "I'm sure you did." He leaned against the wall. "You're angry." "No," she said. "Just surprised. You were always the guy with the 5-year plan, the one who calculated risk like breathing. You never did anything without a strategy. So why are you here, Silas?" He hesitated, then stepped closer. "I don't know. Maybe I'm tired of strategy." She folded her arms. "You don't get to show up after 15 years and ask me to believe that." "I'm not asking you to believe anything," he said. "But I remember how you made me feel back then. And last night it came back like it never left." She looked away, jaw tight. "Back then you didn't even notice me until I spilled coffee on your notes." "Not true," he said. "I noticed you the first day of class. You wore these ridiculous sunflower earrings and sat with your feet tucked under your chair like you were trying to disappear." Her breath caught. "I didn't say anything because I didn't know how to be anything but focused. I thought feelings were distractions. I didn't understand that sometimes. They're the reason you keep going." She stared at him, words caught in her throat. "I'm not the same man I was," he continued. "But when I saw you yesterday, I felt something I haven't in a long time. And I don't want to walk away from that." Her expression softened, but only slightly. "Do you even know what you're asking?" "No," he admitted, "but maybe you could help me figure it out." She exhaled slowly. "I have class tomorrow. I have kids who count on me. I don't live in penthouses or fly across the ocean for brunch meetings." "I'm not asking you to," he said. I'm asking if I can take you to lunch, somewhere with real chairs and no linen napkins. She laughed before she could stop herself. You. Eat at a diner. If it means sitting across from you for an hour, I'll even order the meatloaf. Aurora shook her head, fighting a smile. Fine, but if you flinch at the ketchup bottle, I'm walking out. He held up a hand like a vow. No flinching. She turned to leave, then paused. You really noticed the sunflower earrings? I still remember the way they swung when you laughed. She didn't say anything else. Just walked away with that same quiet grace that had drawn him in all those years ago. Silas stayed behind in the gallery, staring at the painting one last time. Grief, she'd called it. He wondered if it could become something else. Something new. He wasn't sure what was happening, only that he was no longer in control of it, and for the first time in his life, he didn't mind. Aurora was already seated in the corner booth when Silas walked into the diner. The cracked leather seat squeaked beneath her as she shifted, and her fingers traced the rim of her chipped coffee mug. She wore a soft flannel shirt rolled up at the sleeves, and her hair was pulled into a loose braid, strands falling around her face. The light from the window touched her skin like a secret. Silas hesitated for a moment before sliding into the seat across from her. I wasn't sure you'd actually come, she said, glancing up with cautious amusement. That's fair, he replied, setting his phone face down on the table. But I figured if I can sit through a 6-hour meeting with oil executives in Dubai, I can handle a turkey club sandwich next to a woman who terrifies me. She raised an eyebrow. Terrifies you? You make me feel like I'm not in control, he said, reaching for the laminated menu. And I don't remember the last time that happened. Aurora tilted her head. That sounds like a nightmare for a man like you. It should be, he said. But it's not. Their waitress, a woman in her 50s with a pencil behind one ear and a faded name tag that read Loretta, arrived before Aurora could respond. You ready, hon? Loretta asked Aurora. I'll have the spinach omelet. Extra toast. Loretta turned to Silas. And you, he looked at the menu as if it were written in a foreign language. The meatloaf, you sure? Loretta asked, eyeing his tailored coat with suspicion. No, he said, folding the menu, but I'm committed now. As Loretta walked away, Aurora studied him. You really don't belong here. That obvious? It's not the suit, she said. It's the way you hold yourself, like you're always waiting for someone to challenge you. Old habit, he said. I spent years being the youngest man in every boardroom. You either learn how to command space or get buried in it. Aurora nodded but didn't press. Instead, she reached for her coffee. So what happens now, after the reunion, after this, whatever this is? I don't know, he said honestly. I didn't come looking for anything. But I can't stop thinking about you, and I don't want this to be a footnote. I've got a life here, she said carefully. A full one. I don't take off on a whim. I'm not asking you to, he said. But maybe I could be part of it if there's room. She studied him, the noise of the diner fading into the background. I've seen people like you before, Silas. Men who chase the next thing until they forget why they started running. What makes you different? I used to think success meant being untouchable, he said quietly. Now I think it means being brave enough to feel everything I avoided. She didn't answer right away. Their food arrived, her steaming, his slightly too gray, and they ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Aurora set her fork down. You want to know what I remember most about you? He looked up. You never looked up during class, not once. You stared at your notes like they were written in gold. He smiled faintly. I was scared I'd slip. And now, I'm more afraid I'll miss what matters. She leaned back, crossing her arms. Okay, tell me something real, not polished, something no one in your world knows. He hesitated, then said, My father left when I was 12. Walked out in the middle of a snowstorm and never came back. I used to check every black car that passed our street, hoping it was him. Aurora's breath caught, but she stayed still. I stopped looking the day I made my first million, he continued. I thought if I built enough, bought enough, I'd stop needing anyone. And did you? She asked. No, he said. I just stopped admitting it. She reached across the table then and pressed her fingers lightly over his. I used to think love was supposed to be loud, she said. Explosive. But the older I get, the more I realize it's in the quiet things, the everyday choices. I haven't been good at quiet, he said. She smiled. Then maybe it's time you learn. Outside, the sky had turned pewter gray, rain tapped gently against the windows. Silas glanced out, then back at her. Come with me, he said suddenly. She leaned back. Where? There's a gallery opening tonight, midtown. One of my companies is backing the artist. I was going to send someone else in my place, but I want you to see it. I can't just take off, she said. I'll have you back before sunrise. You can sleep the whole way there and back, she hesitated. And the kids? I already called the school and offered to fund their next 3 art programs, he said. In your name, her eyes widened. You didn't. I did. I wasn't sure if you'd say yes, but I wanted to make sure the answer wouldn't cost you anything. Aurora stared at him, stunned. You're serious, she said. I am. She stood slowly, tossing a few bills on the table. Then I guess I need to change. I'll wait, he said, rising. As they walked toward the door, Loretta called after them. You taking that meatloaf to go? Silas paused. Only if it comes with her. Aurora rolled her eyes, but she was laughing as they stepped into the drizzle. And for the first time in years, Silas Easton didn't feel like he was chasing anything. He felt like he was finally arriving. By the time Aurora stepped out of the black town car in front of the Manhattan Gallery, night had already draped itself over the city like velvet. Rain had dried to a glisten on the pavement, reflecting the golden light pouring from the arched windows of the building. Silas stood beside her, adjusting the cuff of his shirt beneath a charcoal coat. He held out his hand not as a command but an offering. She took it. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors stretched beneath their feet, and clusters of guests in sleek evening wear murmured over champagne flutes and canvases framed in obsidian. The space buzzed with cultivated wealth, but Aurora didn't shrink beneath it. She walked beside Silas with her chin lifted, absorbing it all with quiet composure. You didn't tell me you own the gallery, she murmured under her breath. I don't, he replied. I just rebuilt it. The artist is a former foster kid from Queens. I backed her first 3 shows. She's brilliant. Aurora's gaze softened. They stopped in front of a massive piece at the far end of the gallery, bold streaks of ochre and emerald clashing across a field of broken glass mounted beneath the paint, catching the light like fractured stars. She painted that after her brother disappeared, Silas said quietly. No one believed her when she said he was taken. It's called unheard. Aurora stepped closer, her breath slowing. It's devastating. She told me she didn't want it to be beautiful, he said. She wanted it to be undeniable. Aurora looked at him. You feel things more than people think. I just stopped showing it, he said. Until you, before she could respond, a woman in silver approached. Silas, they're ready for you. He nodded once, then turned to Aurora. Come with me. He led her through a side hallway that opened onto a private rooftop terrace cordoned off for the sponsors. The city stretched in every direction, glittering like a galaxy. A long table had been set near the edge, candles flickering in the breeze, the skyline rising like a promise behind it. This is for you, he said. Aurora blinked. You set this up. I told them to prepare it in case you said yes. She walked to the railing, resting her hands on the cool stone. It's beautiful. I wanted you to see the world the way I see it when you're in it. She turned to face him. You keep doing that. Doing what? Disarming me, making me think this might actually be real. It is, he said. I'm not here for one night. I'm here because being near you feels like something I can finally stop running from. She was quiet for a long moment. I spent so many years thinking I wasn't enough for anything like this. I watched people chase careers, money, power. I stayed behind. I told myself it was because I loved what I did, and I do. But maybe I was afraid no one would ever choose me. I'm choosing you, he said. Not for tonight, not for a weekend in the city. For every version of the future I never let myself imagine. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Don't say that unless you mean it. I've never meant anything more. She looked away, blinking quickly. I don't fit into this world. I don't care, he said. I'll build a new one around you. She shook her head, half laughing. You can't fix everything with money, Silas. I know, he said. But I can use it to show you how serious I am. He reached into his coat and handed her a small envelope. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a deed. She read the address. Her eyes widened. You bought my school. I bought the building, he clarified. And donated it to the district under your name. Full renovation, new supplies, scholarships for the art students. They'll never have to cut your program again. She stared at him, stunned. I'm not asking you to leave your life, he said. I'm offering to protect the one you built. You don't have to change for me. I'll meet you where you are. Aurora stepped forward. You don't have to do all this. I know, he said, but I want to. Because I'm falling in love with you and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it, she exhaled, eyes searching his. That's a big word. So is forever, he said, but I've got the time. Her voice broke slightly. You really mean this, with everything I am. Aurora reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the edge of his jaw. Then take me home, Brooklyn, she shook her head. Wherever you are, that's home now. He pulled her into his arms and the city quieted around them. The wind lifted the edge of her coat, the candles flickered, and for a moment, time folded in on itself. Two people who once shared a classroom, now sharing something far more profound. Later, in a sunlit brownstone overlooking the East River, a gift from Silas that she'd protested until he promised she'd keep her rent-free apartment. Aurora stood in the kitchen barefoot, painting frosting onto a cupcake. He watched her from the doorway, tie loose around his neck, coffee in hand. You're doing that on purpose, he said. She looked up. What? Reminding me of the day you ruined my research notes. She handed him the cupcake. I was hoping it would bring everything full circle. He took a bite, then grinned. It did. She leaned into him, arms sliding around his waist. You know, I never thought the man who vanished after graduation would show up and turn my life upside down. He kissed her temple. And I never thought the girl who sat behind me would turn out to be the only person who ever made me feel whole. They stood there, wrapped in quiet certainty. No more questions. No more running. Just two people who had finally found their way back, older, wiser, and entirely undone by a love neither of them saw coming. Exactly the way it was always meant to be. A year later, Aurora stood in front of a blank wall at the newly renovated Eastbrook Community Arts Center, a paintbrush poised in her hand and a nervous flutter in her chest. Behind her, the sound of laughter drifted through the open archways. Students, volunteers, and neighborhood families gathering for the center's inaugural summer program. The building had once been a decaying warehouse, forgotten and fenced off. Now it pulsed with color and purpose, every corner designed to foster creativity and belonging. It was her. Silas had made sure of that, but she had chosen every tile, every easel, every light fixture with her own hands. Silas stepped up beside her, slipping an arm around her waist, his other hand holding a paper coffee cup with her name scrawled across the side in Sharpie. You're staring at it like it's going to paint itself. I'm waiting for the feeling, she said. He leaned in close. What feeling? The one that tells me this is really mine. Sometimes it still feels borrowed. Then let me remind you, he said, pulling a small envelope from his inside pocket and handing it to her. She opened it slowly, unfolding the single sheet of paper. It was a letter from the city's Department of Cultural Affairs, approving her proposal for ongoing funding. Her name was listed as the founder and director. She swallowed hard. You didn't pull strings, did you? I didn't have to, he said. Your work did that. I just made sure the lights stayed on long enough for people to see it. She folded the letter carefully. You know, you've made it very difficult for me to ever win an argument again. I'm hoping that means you'll stop trying. She elbowed him gently. Not a chance. As they walked back toward the courtyard, a young girl tugged on Aurora's hand. Miss Reyes, are we still painting the rooftop garden next week? Yes, Aurora said. We'll start with the flower boxes Monday morning. The girl beamed and ran off. Silas watched her with quiet pride. They adore you. They trust me, Aurora said. That's more important. They sat on a bench beneath a canopy of string lights, surrounded by the gentle hum of conversation and the scent of fresh citrus from the potted lemon trees lining the walkways. I got an offer, Silas said, glancing down at her. For what? A buyout. One of the big London firms wants to absorb Easton Holdings. They're throwing around numbers that made my CFO blink twice. She looked up at him. And I turned it down, her eyebrows lifted. You never turned down a deal. I used to believe I had to keep building just to prove I could, he said. Now I want to build something I actually want to keep. She rested her head against his shoulder. You're changing. I'm becoming, he said. There's a difference. They stayed like that for a while, the air warm and still. Then Aurora sat up suddenly. I have something too, he studied her face. Good or bad? I don't know yet. Terrifying, mostly. She reached into the tote bag beside her and pulled out a slim black portfolio. I submitted some of my work to a residency in Florence. One of my students dared me to. I didn't think I had a shot. He took the folder from her and flipped it open. A letter lay inside, printed on thick paper, the words, "We are pleased to inform you," standing out in bold. He looked at her slowly. You got in. I leave in the fall, 3 months, it's fully funded. His face was unreadable for a moment, then he nodded. You're going, she blinked. I am. You're not staying here because of me, he said. You're going because this is your dream and I'll be there. Whether it's in Florence or Brooklyn or wherever your next canvas takes you, her voice wavered. You'd really come with me? I can run my company from anywhere, he said. And if I can't, then I'm not running it right, she exhaled shakily. What if this changes things? It will, he said. But only in the ways that matter. I want your world, Aurora, not just the parts that are easy. She kissed him then, not in a rush or a panic, but with the calm certainty of a woman who had finally found her person. He pulled her close, anchoring her as the rest of the world fell away. Later that evening, Silas surprised her once more. He led her to the rooftop garden, now quiet and bathed in the soft gold of dusk. A small table was set near the edge, and beside it stood a local violinist, a teenager from the center playing a soft, haunting melody. At the center of the table was a jewelry box, unassuming and unadorned. Aurora stared at it. What is this? He opened it slowly. Inside was a ring delicate with a single sapphire in the center flanked by 2 tiny diamonds. It wasn't flashy. It was intentional. I could have given you something 10 times bigger, he said, but I wanted it to feel like you, quiet, strong, unforgettable. She looked at him, eyes wide. I don't need a ceremony next week or next year. I just need to know that one day when the time is right, you'll say yes. She reached for the ring, her hands trembling. You're really doing this? I've done a lot of deals, he said, but this is the only one I've ever needed to get right. She slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Yes, she whispered. Whenever that time is, yes. He pulled her into his arms, and the violin played on as the city lights flickered beneath them. They danced slowly, surrounded by the scent of lavender and the sound of something new beginning. Months later, Florence bloomed around them. Aurora painted in a sunlit studio overlooking terracotta rooftops, and Silas worked from a quiet terrace nearby, espresso in hand. They cooked dinner together in a tiny stone kitchen, argued over basil versus oregano, and fell asleep tangled in each other's arms with the windows open to the sound of bells. They didn't rush the wedding. There was no need. They had a life now, one built on choice, not urgency. One painted in every shade they had once been too afraid to use. And in the quiet mornings, when Silas kissed the back of her neck and Aurora whispered the first words of a new idea, they knew. This wasn't just a love story. It was there forever.